Hey everyone, welcome back to the series. This video we're going to do a little bit of cleanup after the last video where we created the ability to upload images to the products. And we want to move on to the customer module in the next video, but I think we just need to do a little bit more work on the vendor side before we move on. It's not going to be 100% perfect. There will be some rough edges, but I'm trying to drive towards a minimum viable product. But I decided there are some things I just couldn't live with, and one of them was that the file sizes going into storage are pretty darn large. So we've got some images that are 3.5 or more megabytes, which is actually pretty modest by today's standards. Even mid-size phones are putting 40 megapixel cameras out there, and the file sizes are huge, and they're way bigger than what you would need for a phone. So you really need to do some kind of compressing on your own. So I looked at a couple of options. I have used in the past, I've written a cloud function, a Firebase cloud function, and here's one of them. I wrote it in JavaScript. It does resize. It also goes in, so where we have a situation where we've got a field that has our image URL. If you resize it, then it creates a new image URL. So my function would also go to Firestore and update that field with the new resized value for the image URL instead of the original one. In complex situations where I wanted to have 2 or 3 or 4 different sizes of an image, I would create an image collection with an ID that I could go from the record out to the image ID and then pick the size that I wanted from there from the list of image URLs. But this is a pain in the butt. I am not, I hate to say this because some of you might have deduced where I live by my map videos, not the biggest fan of JavaScript. I know some people are. JavaScript is, of course, a great language for doing all that it does, but it lets you do stupid things. And apparently, if I am left to my own devices, I do stupid things. And I'm sure the emulator in Firebase is so much better for developing. I haven't really had a chance to dig into it, but I would do this. I would make a change. I would upload it. I would have to make an upload. I would have to wait for the logs to trickle down from the Firebase Cloud Functions. It was a nightmare. It just took forever. I would get it almost there, and it would be just a few steps short, and it just seemed like I would spend days trying to refine the last little bit on this one. So I never liked that function. I checked out the extensions here, and you know, there's some great options here for resizing the image, and you can actually designate the size you want, delete the old one, or keep it. But the problem is that with our setup here, I wasn't able to, I mean, I could go in there and I think you can edit the code, but if you ever mess with it again, it's just gonna kind of write over what you did with the extension. So it would resize, but it wouldn't be able to do this last piece where it actually goes to Firestore and updates the download URL. So I didn't like that. So I started looking at some of the Dart options, and there is one called Image Cropper, which looked like a great package, but it didn't compress, it just cropped. I do think that I want to crop the images because really when you get down to it, square is the only thing you can control. If it's allowed to be any different height or width ratio, you are really not going to be able to do much with your layout. So I want to square these off. Cropper would be great for that, but it didn't compress. And so I found this one called Flutter Native Image, which is somewhat self-depreciating here in the description, but you know, there are several people working on it. It is getting a 95 on the score, and the only docs are for popularity, and maintenance health is 100. I've tried it. It seems to work fine. It does involve us doing some math, dread, but I think it's going to work well for both of our purposes of cropping it down to square and then compressing it into a reasonable size. And so I'm going to use this Flutter Native Image. So that's going to solve the one problem. The other problem was that when we upload, we get really no feedback while we do, so we're going to work in a little bit of a spinner there. And then lastly, since we've come this far, we might as well go ahead and if we have uploaded an image, we might as well knock out this default image and show it. All right, so we're going to accomplish those three things today. And the first thing we need to do is add this Flutter native image package, if you're going to follow along with me. So I'm just going to take the dependency and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it into pubspec.yaml. And I am going to stop and restart this. I'm assuming that it needs to restart. All right, let me pause the video. I'll come back when that is restarted. All right, so let's start in our product block and let's revisit our pick image function. And so if we're going to be resizing it and cropping it, we want to probably do that in here where we know we have an image, but just before we actually send it to the service for uploading to Firebase. And so let's get the image properties. So we can do that with, let's see, image properties is going to equal properties. And we can do that with the Flutter native, should be an equal sign between there. Flutter native image. In fact, we need to import that package to get the image properties as well. And we want to do get image properties. So we just want to know about that image first. And so it needs a path, so we can get that from our image property up here, which has a path on it. Let me stretch this a little bit. All right, and so let's start by cropping the image. And if we look at the documentation, let me bring that over here. Here in cropping, cropping takes a file path, which is going to be the file path on our native device, an origin for X, an origin for Y, a width, and a height. And so if we have a picture that is taller than it is wide, so it's portrait, then we want to start the origin of X over at 0. And then the origin of Y is going to want to be the difference between Y and X divided by 2. That's going to square it off for us. That will take an equal amount from the top and the bottom. And then if it's wider, if it's landscape, we want to just do the opposite. So hope you follow me on that. So let's just say it's 4 inches wide by 6 inches tall. Then we want to crop an inch off of the top and the bottom. That's the difference between the height and the width divided by 2, and that will center it and crop it square. All right, so for cropping the image, we want to know, is it wider, is it in landscape, or is it in portrait, or is it already square? So we would first say if properties.height is greater than properties.width, then in that case, we're going to crop it. But here's what I want to do. I want to get my Y offset. I want to know how much I need to start from the top. And I'm going to do that by properties height minus properties width. And I'm going to divide that by 2. And fortunately, that's pretty much the extent of the math that we have to do here. And then then I can create a cropped file. And since I'm in an if statement, let me declare it up here. I will create a file that is called cropped file. And I'm going to set that equal to, I'm going to wait Flutter native image dot crop image, and here are all my options. So let me slide the screen over a little bit. So file name is going to be image.path, and origin X, now this one is taller than it is wide, so origin X is going to be 0. We want the full width, but we don't want the full height, so we're going to start at Y offset and I need to actually cast that to an integer. And so if I do that, it's just going to crop it and return the integer. Now for width and height, I want whatever the width was because we want to go with the narrowest value. So we're going to do properties dot width, and then we're also going to do that for height because the point is to square this off. So properties width on the y-axis and the x-axis like that. All right. So then we're going to say else if properties.width is greater than properties.height. So in other words, it is in landscape mode. Then we're going to do the opposite of all of this. So I'll copy that, I'll paste that in there, and I'm just going to start flopping around values. So I'm going to call this x offset instead of y offset, so it makes more sense to us. It's actually going to want to be the width minus the height because we know the width is more than the height in this case. And we want image path. Now we don't want to start at 0 for x. We want x offset dot to int. And for y, we do want to start at 0 because we're taking the full height. And then instead of properties dot width, we are going height. So everything's just the opposite. And this is also height too. All right, and then our else case is it might already be square. And in that case, we don't want to do anything with it. Cropped file is going to be equal to file image.path. So we'll just cast it to a file. All right, that takes care of our cropping. So let's resize it. And this is easier. We're just going to say file compressed file is going to be equal to await Flutter native image dot compress image, and we want our file name, and so this is actually going to be the crop file. So crop file dot path, and let's see if I can stretch this even better here. I could wrap it, I don't want to. Oh, I got crop image, that's what I did. We want a compress image, sorry about that. Compress image, and so we can give it the cropped file.path. Now we can also give it a quality value, which is from 0 to 100. So I'm just going to say 100. Let's preserve the quality. And actually that should be an integer. And then lastly, we're going to give it a target height and a target width. So I'm going to just say 600. I don't know why. That's what's in the documentation, so I think it's power of suggestion. All right, so then when we upload our image, we don't actually want to upload the image.path anymore because we have manipulated that image. We have a file right here, so we can take out the file cast as well and just put in compressed file here. All right, so let's give that a run. Get this all out of here. Slide this over a little bit. All right, so if I go into corn and I've got an image here, if I go and change the image, so we can see it there. It is squared off. If we go and look in our console, it's going to be a little difficult to tell which is which because I have uploaded a few already. But you can see that everything July 13th is down to about 284 kilobytes. Here, whereas we were up around 2.5 to 3.5 megabytes originally. So we have compressed those. If we click on them, we can see that they are squared off and they are going to be pretty easy to, that's one from the last time. This is July 13th here, squared off, July 13th, squared off. Good. So that's part of the battle. The other would be is that it would be nice to actually see some feedback on the screen that things are loading. The loading is happening awful quick now that it's down to about 1/4 of a megabyte. But still, you'd like to see something on the screen there. And on a slower connection, you might it might take some time to upload. Now there's a sophisticated solution, which would be what we stream and get feedback on the percentage of bytes that have been uploaded and have a progress bar that scrolls across here. And I would kind of earmark that to come back and do that on a future iteration. For now, I am fine just flagging that we have started this process and then turning it off so that we have a spinner when this process starts, and we just turn it off when the image is ready to load. So we can do that by creating ourselves a variable that we can listen to as a stream. So if we come up here to the top and we create a new final variable, which we can call is uploading. So underscore is uploading, and we'll set that to a behavior subject. And that'll be a Boolean, so we're going to give it a true false. And let me just close that out, go all the way to the bottom, or wherever we put our dispose method. I guess it's about halfway down. Is uploading.close, and that way we'll close the stream. We do need to be able to listen to it, so let's give it a getter. So we'll do stream Boolean get is uploading, and we will just point that to the isUploading.stream. All right, we don't need a setter because we are not going to publicly set that. We're going to do that right here. And so when we start our pick image, let's say if image is not null at this point, this is where we want to start showing the spinner. So we will go ahead and do isUploading.sync.add true. And then if we get all the way down here and we are able to change the image URL, then we will do isUploading.sync.add false. So we'll turn it off. All right, so we need to be able to listen to that in our screen. So let's maneuver over to Screens, Edit Product. And let's find our image, which is right here. And let's come above that and create ourselves a stream builder. We'll type Boolean. And let's move this down here. In fact, I'm going to do lead with the stream, and oh my goodness, what did I hit? Stream, I guess stateful widget. Product block.isUploading, that's going to be our stream. And then our builder is going to take in a context and a snapshot. Not a snapshotty, but a snapshot. And we will return. First of all, let's check if there is no data or it's false. In that case, we don't want to show anything. So if not snapshot has data, or snapshot.data equals false, then we want to, that should be has data. Has data. Here we go. We just want to return an empty container. So we don't want to see anything if this is not loading or there's no data yet. I don't want to comma there. But if it is loading, we want to just show a spinner. So let's center it up and let's do a child. And the child will depend on the platform. So platform.isIOS. And if it is, we'll do Cupertino activity indicator. And if it is not, we will do circular progress indicator. Stretch that out for you. I'm going to go ahead and do this. All right, and I need a comma after that stream builder. All right, so now if I were to change this image, come out of here, I get a spinner, and then we get the new image. So it at least gives us some feedback that something is going on. If we're changing the image, it might be nice if it disappeared. Again, I think we're going to have some rough edges here, and I'm okay with that. I think we need to move on to the customer module for now. Spinner gives you some indication that something's going on in the background. So that's good for now. Lastly, if we exit out of here, boy, it sure would be nice to actually see the image here that we've uploaded instead of this default one. And so to do that, let's go to our widgets folder and let's go to our card. And currently we just have the default image hard-coded in. So let's change that. So let's give ourselves a variable up at the top, a final string image URL. And it's not required, so we'll just do this dot image URL. Remember, the default for our image is a blank string or an empty string. So in the child here, why don't we check for if image URL is not equal to null and also not equal to a blank string. So that will cover our case if we have a record and somebody passes it in and it's blank, or they just don't call the image URL. They don't include that as a parameter and they get a null. In that case, we're going to get the image. Oops. Otherwise, we're going to pass the default image. So actually, let me take this down here. So here we want an image, but we want it to be a network image because we have a network URL, and that is going to be image URL. So let's go to our widgets products. And when we create our app card, let's go ahead and populate the image URL property with product.imageURL. All right, and we do that, it goes crazy. 600 is too big. So let's go back to our card and let's see, we set a height here of 100 on our default. So let's do that here as well. And there we go. I would like to just add a little rounding to those. It looks very harsh, squared off like that. So I'm gonna surround the image. I'm gonna wrap with a widget, and that widget is going to be clip r rect. And that's gonna allow me to set a border radius. In fact, I think I'll do that down here. And we'll do a border radius dot circular, and I'm just going to do 5. I don't want anything extreme. I just want something that's not a harsh edge like that. That's a little better. All right, so I'm going to wrap this one here, and we are going to leave the vendor module for a while. Now we know there's a couple of rough edges in it, and that's okay. We're going to move on to the customer experience. We're going to have database records that we can search and put in our cart and all that stuff. And if we need to add more, we can come to our vendor module and do that. So this is kind of a big turning point in this application. We're going to move to the customer experience next time. Thanks for following along to this point. Thanks for continuing to watch, and we will see you next time.